Hello, everybody. My name is Brianna. I want to talk to you guys about my journey with cervical cancer. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer on December 17th. But I already kind of knew. I felt it in my body that I had cancer. So I have been dealing with this maybe since like end of August, early September. I started going to a urgent care. Well, I wouldn't call it an urgent care, but it was just like a convenient care where you could just see a doctor if you had, if you wanted to know something was going on. So I went to the doctor. They told me that I had a UTI. Well, I'm sorry, let me back up. I went to the doctor because I started having discharge. I was having this clear, watery discharge to where I had to wear a pad. I couldn't not wear a pad because it was so much, like it was saturating. So I went to the doctor. They told me I had a UTI. They told me that I also had BV. BV is bacterial vaginosis or vaginitis. It's very common amongst women. So they gave me antibiotics for it. One of the most common antibiotic for BV is Flagyl or metronidazole. So they give me that for 7 days. I take it, and the discharge did not clear up. The UTI went away because they gave me other antibiotics, but the discharge did not. So I went back to the same doctor. I let them know, like, hey, it didn't clear up. I still have this. So they did like a vaginal swab, and they gave me some more antibiotics. The Flagyl, they put me on a higher dose for longer days. I was on 500 milligrams of Flagyl for 15 days. So I take that for 15 days, and the discharge still did not clear up. They told me that if it did not clear up, to go follow up with my OBGYN. At this point, it's the end of October. So I'm like, okay. So I scheduled my appointment with the OBGYN. The earliest appointment I can get with her was November 11th. So in the meantime, I get on YouTube. I'm looking up like how to clear up, BV, because it's like, these medicines aren't working, and I don't want to keep pumping myself with antibiotics so my body get used to it or whatever. So I run across these, I forgot what they're called. Oh, boric acid pills. And I see a lot of videos on them, and everybody's like, yeah, this helped for me. The antibiotics weren't working for me either, whatever. So I tried them, and I'm like, okay, cool, I tried. Still don't work. None of that shit worked. Sorry, but it's kind of frustrating. So, like, I started getting this pain in the lower left-hand side of my stomach. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm taking ibuprofen, and, it's subduing the pain, but I'm like, where's this pain coming from? I thought I had a UTI. So I go to the OBGYN. Appointment finally come, and she does a vaginal swab, and she's like, she's asking me questions like, so when was your last period or whatever? And I'm like, it's really hard to tell when my last period was, because I had been on the antibiotics, and, they were making me bleed in between. So it was really hard to tell. I really didn't know. So when she's doing the vaginal swab, she's like, oh, you have some lesions on your cervix right at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, 9 o'clock? I'm like, what the hell is that? So I think about it like 9 is on the left-hand side of the clock. So, yeah, I'm like, okay. So my first thought, like, everybody knows what lesions are. I know what lesions are, but I didn't know what it was in the context of on my cervix. So I was like, okay, my first thought was like, is this going to affect me having kids or whatever? She was like, okay, well, we wouldn't be checking for that. We would be checking for cancer and, other things, right? So she's like, okay, I'm going to give you some more antibiotics for fucking what? I don't know. She gave me some more Flagyl, and this time she gave me doxycycline. So I take it for like 3 days, and it's not working. So I took myself off that. I'm just like, I'm not gonna keep pumping myself with a medication that don't work. So she wanted to see me the following week for a full pap smear. So when I go to see, so right before I went to see her, like an hour before my appointment, I start bleeding. Like, I just felt blood all of a sudden. And it was like so much of it. So I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm trying to, luckily I'm at home. So I like start trying to, I start trying to clean myself up. So I got myself cleaned up. And so I went to the doctor. When I get to the doctor, mind you, on my way there, I'm low-key having an anxiety attack because I'm like, what the hell? Like, why did I start bleeding? I'm sorry, like, my leg hurts, and that's one of the, the effects of this cancer. So I get to the doctor's office, and I'm telling the nurse, like, I started bleeding out of nowhere. I'm trying to control and clean up this blood as much as possible, and I can't. So she's like, okay, don't worry about it. We'll give you some wipes or whatever. So I got most of the blood cleaned up, and I'm sitting on the table, and I like sneeze or something, and ladies, you already know what happened. I was just like, what the fuck? So I'm like apologizing to the doctor. She's like, no. This is my job. This is what we do. And I'm like, okay, cool. So she do the pap smear. And I tell her like, I'm starting to have pain. Can you give me some medicine for pain? She didn't fucking want to give me medicine for pain, but she wanted to give me medicine to stop the bleeding. So she gave me some progesterone, to slow the bleeding down. And it did not slow it down. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not really. So I had seen her the week before Thanksgiving. So the day after Thanksgiving, I'm at work. And I go to the bathroom. And all of a sudden, I'm bleeding, like horribly, like clots of blood that's maybe like this big. Like they're just pouring out. Every time I attempted to stand up, it just poured out. Bright red, like it looked like a murder scene. It looked like I had been stabbed. So, I'm trying to text my coworkers, like anybody can come help me. Like nobody was available. So I'm just sitting there just bleeding. So I finally, stood up enough to where I can at least go to my desk and get me some pads or something. And by the time I get to my desk, there's blood dripping down my thighs because it was so much blood. Like every time I stood up or sat down, blood was coming out. So I had to leave. I told my job, like, I gotta go. I went, by the time I got to my car, it was blood on my shoes. That's how bad I was bleeding. Like, it was blood on my shoes or whatever. So, I get to the hospital. They take my blood. They're like, well, you're not losing any blood, but we're just going to give you some more progesterone and you're free to go. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I go home. I'm taking the progesterone. Shit's still not working. In the meantime, I told my doctor, like, I'm having pain or whatever. I'm having pain. And she's like, okay, well, we're going to order you an ultrasound so we can see what's going on in there. Ultrasound was never discussed prior to me saying I had pain. Like, she wasn't going to order an ultrasound if I didn't say I had pain or whatever. So I go to the appointment to have the fucking ultrasound, and for some reason I couldn't do the ultrasound that day, so they had to reschedule me. Mind you, I was also scheduled to have a biopsy, and for those who don't know what a biopsy is, that's when they take samples of whatever part of your body. They take a sample of, like, a tissue sample, and they test it. So by them taking a sample of my cervix, that would have told me if I had cancer or not. So I'm at the receptionist talking about this fucking ultrasound, and she's like, okay, we're gonna reschedule you, and we're gonna reschedule you for the next Monday. So I'm like, oh well, I can't do it next Monday. I have a biopsy scheduled with the doctor. And she's like, oh, well, no, it's no biopsy. It's just to read the ultrasound results. And I was like, well, no, because that's not what this doctor told me. The doctor told me that, we were going to do a biopsy. And at this point, I'm getting frustrated because at that point, it was December 4th. I had now been dealing with this in September. So it's like, if you fucking think this is cancer, why are we taking so long to get answers? So now I'm frustrated. So I'm like, have the doctor call me or have her nurse call me. Because at this point, y'all, like, nobody knows if it's cancer or not. And by the time I figure it out, I'm gonna be stage 2. So the nurse calls me, and I'm like telling the nurse, like, I'm bleeding. Like, I'm bleeding so bad that I can't work. Like, it's not affecting my job. I can't comfortably go to work and focus. And then all of a sudden I start bleeding like I did before. There's no fucking way. So she's like, oh no, I know this doctor. She wants you to have the surgery, and I work with her. I told her, I don't care who you work with. I said, but I need answers. Oh, if you're bleeding or if you're having that much pain, go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and they didn't do anything for me. So she was like, she just wants you to have the ultrasound. I'm like, okay, whatever. So, what happened next? I don't know the date, but it's Saturday. I was at work once again, chilling, doing my job, and I go to the bathroom to change my pad, and I start bleeding bad again. This time I have a change of clothes at work because I can't keep leaving work or whatever. So this time I have a change of clothes. I text my coworker, like, look, I'm stuck in the bathroom. I'm going to just sit here, have an hour lunch. I'm just going to sit here until it wants to stop. I'm bleeding like this. So I got it to at least where I can at least control it. Changed my clothes, went back to my desk, but I started having like these cold sweats. So I was like, I have to go. So I live about 30 minutes from my job. So I drive home. I get in the bathtub. I'm literally bleeding out in the bathtub. Like when they say it's a bloodbath, literally the water was red. Like I had to get out because I was starting to like gag because it was just so much blood. When I stood up, I couldn't see. My ears started ringing, and I was getting ready I felt like I was dying. I was getting ready to go down. I made it to my room door, and I called out for my mom. There's a trail of blood coming from my bathroom through my room to the living room. My mom had to call the ambulance. They told me, like, basically you can drive her to the hospital. or we can take her, but it's gonna be $1,000. You know how they do or whatever. And my mom drove me to the hospital. I was in the worst pain. I would say, even in all of my years of having a period, I never had cramps. I didn't have cramps then, but I just felt like I had to push. So I felt like I was in so much pain. Like, that's what childbirth had to be. Like, I ain't got no kids. So I'm like, this is what childbirth must feel like. So I get to the hospital. They put me in a wheelchair. They check me in. They start taking my blood. So when they took my blood, like, I started like shaking, like my head. I'm like, I can't see. Like, I couldn't see. I was getting hot. I was starting to sweat. Like, and the guy was like, look at me, look at me. I'm like, I can't see you, like, or whatever. So they rushed me in the back. They let me lay down. The doctor comes do another exam. This is about the 10th person down there. Do an exam. They couldn't see anything because I was gushing out blood. I was hemorrhaging. I started at a blood level at 12. When I got to the back of the ER, I was at 8. So I had lost that much blood. They kept me overnight. They gave me pain pills. They told me an OBGYN was going to come see me the next day. They gave me a blood transfusion. I don't recommend blood transfusions to nobody unless you die, unless you really fucking need it, because I still don't feel right. And that was like maybe a week and a half ago. So the next day, an OBGYN comes and see me. And, like, I don't know, I just feel like doctors be playing shit off like, like you don't know what you're talking about, or, no, you don't got that or whatever. You're like, you don't have cancer. Like, I feel like they be playing or whatever. So, I'm telling the lady, like, what I just told y'all, how this doctor's office is taking their time. She said, I got certain lesions on my cervix. It hurt. All this, they talking about discharging me. I can go home, or whatever. So, I'm talking to the OBGYN like I'm talking to y'all. She's like, okay, I'm going to do a cervical scan. This is like the 10th, 100th person down there. So I'm like, okay, cool. She goes down there. She does her little scan. She comes back up. Her face, her whole mood changed. She was like, these lesions are horrible. She said, we need to do a biopsy right now. Like, right now. So she's like calling, like, I need y'all to bring this, and this, and this. And they didn't have nothing she needed, but they bought her like some back alley abortion type shit. Like, here's the 10. Here what you got to do. Here's some gloves. Bam. So she was like, okay. So, she did it. It was not painful. She took a piece of the cervix, put it in the urine little cup, and sent it to the lab. She said, follow up with me in a week. I'm like, okay, cool. Get out the hospital. That was a Sunday. I'm off Sunday, Monday. Tuesday, I go to work. They gave me like this other medicine to stop bleeding that has worked because I haven't really bled. I had an actual real period, but no excessive bleeding. Tuesday, December 17th. I was just following up with her. And I didn't think like, she was going to have results. I had just got out of the hospital Sunday. So I go to her, or her go to my appointment. I get there and I'm not nervous or anything, but I was just looking like, she was going to schedule me to come back and she was going to read the results to me. So she came in. She's very personable. She sits, like when I was in the hospital, she talked to me for an hour. She was sitting there. She was listening to everything that I was saying. She was just like, I don't want to, step on anybody's toes and take anybody's patience. And I told her, you can't step on anybody's toes or take anything from anybody who ain't doing shit. And I told her just like that. So she comes in. She was like, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but it is cervical cancer, which I already knew. I knew my body. I know my body, cervical cancer, and all of that. So, I was just talking to her. She was like, I'm going to refer you to the women's center, cancer center for women, whatever. She was like, I'll let them operate on me anytime, I love them or whatever. And she was like, do you mind signing a release form so I can get all your medical records from the previous doctor? I just told her, like, I don't mind. Like, I trust you. I'm putting, I'd rather fuck with you, basically. So, when I first called the Women's Cancer Center and scheduled the appointment, she was like, January 6th or something like that. January 2nd or something like that. So I'm like, okay. So, I told my family, and, everybody sad. Told my sister, my mom, my brother, everybody is sad. And I'm just like, they want to cry and stuff like that. They want to cry and stuff like that. But I'm like, don't cry. I'm in a good space. I'm not sad. I'm just mad that this other doctor's office tried to play me. But I'm not sad. So, last Thursday, the Women's Cancer Center called me and was like, okay, we're moving your appointment from January whatever to December 23rd. Can you come in? I said, yeah, I can come in. So I go in there. It was a long fucking wait. My appointment was at 1:30. I didn't get done with that appointment until about almost 4 o'clock. So I go in there, and an intern comes in, and they're just getting information of how it all started. Everything I told y'all, I told them. Then a doctor comes in. So they're like, get undressed. We want to do a scan. I'm like, all right, number 20. Here you go. The 20th person down here. So they do the vaginal, whatever, pelvic exam. And they tell me that I have a tumor the size of a tennis ball. Whatever the size of a fucking tennis ball is, but yeah, I get it. The size of a tennis ball. And then she says that because it is 7 centimeters large, she wants to do exploratory surgery, which means that they want to see if it has spread through the lymph nodes, whatever you want to call them. If it has went into my colon, if it has spread through to my bladder. That's what she wants to do first. She said that because it's big like that they can't do like a radical hysterectomy, which basically means that if it's below 4 centimeters, that they would just automatically remove it and take out my uterus and all my baby shit. Okay. So she was saying that once that happens, I can be staged. She said that after I'm staged, we'll start radiation. I will have to do radiation every day. And I think I will have to do chemo like once a week. She said that after everything is said and done, I would not be able to carry a baby because the radiation will basically destroy my uterus. I'm scheduled to have surgery on January 13th at 9 in the morning. And that's where I'm at. A little bit about me. I love kids. I loved kids since I was a kid. I loved babies since I can remember. And, it's just not fair to me. It's just not fair to me. I am 29. I've lived my 20s the best way I could. I loved my 20s. If I would have known like this is how it was gonna end, maybe I would have had kids before. But she told me that before we start that, I would see an infertility doctor so I can at least harvest my eggs. That that means I would have to take hormone pills and hormone shots so I can have a better chance of having better eggs to be fertilized. I know this video is long-winded, but please bear with me. Please, 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 please get your yearly checkups. Please, because I'm in pain. I'm tired. You know, I have a lot of support. I have a lot of love around me. But I'm sad because I always wanted kids. I know, you know, me not being able to carry kids does not stop me from being a mother. But I feel like every woman should experience childbirth, you know? That's just where I'm at. And I want to keep you guys updated. So you guys probably be hearing from me around surgery time. Any questions that you have, feel free to ask. I joined a cervical cancer group on Facebook. It's really nice. It's also sad. A lot of people in there going through a whole bunch of stuff or whatever. I feel like I can beat this. I don't feel like, you know, this is an end all be all. I feel like I've been through a lot. I had kidney failure at 18. Some other stuff, and I've recovered 100% from that. So I feel like, you know, I can recover from this. It's just painful, and I'm just at the beginning, y'all. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Any questions, just hit me up. Bye.